Welcome, everyone, to Mastering Your Career and Parenting as a High Achieving Mom. We're going to have an unfiltered conversation around what it takes to navigate our career ambitions while aspiring to be devoted moms. We're going to talk about practical strategies we use in our day to days, the motherhood penalty at work, and what we've had to actually unlearn in order to really just lead a fulfilling life and sustainable life. Like everything that society tells us that we need to do, but honestly is just not realistic. This conversation is coming especially timely for me because my daughter started preschool on Monday. Tuesday she woke up with a fever, so she's been at home the rest of the week. My husband is also sick, my partner, and just managing just like work and all of that. And I'm also pregnant, and so they're just like full survival mode happening in our household right now. And I was like, wow, I'm so excited to come to this conversation because I know so many of you can relate and understand that. And that's just part of like having the honest truth of like what it takes to like be a really high performing, ambitious mom who wants a full career and full family life. And honestly, I wouldn't trade any of it for the world. Like I love all of this. I think it's amazing. And what I'm really excited about for this conversation is all of our panelists. We have a range of kids' ages, backgrounds, and priorities. And we've made different decisions based on what feels right for us and our families, which is especially important to highlight because there's no one flavor of motherhood. Now, I'm going to use the word mom throughout the conversation, but I just want to say everybody is welcome. Allies, all parents and caregivers, aspiring parents, this conversation isn't just for moms. So before we dive in, let's just quickly introduce ourselves. I'm Shivani. I am the CEO and founder of Career Mama and Arise Leadership. As I shared, I have a 2-year-old daughter. We're pregnant with a baby boy later this year, which I'm very excited and grateful for. And, really just with, I feel like we finally found our footing with one child and now everything's just going to go into chaos again with the second child. But again, like managing that, managing an active toddler, being CEO, getting ready for family four soon has been a lot, but I would not trade this beautiful, messy journey at all. I think it's just the most special experience. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. Vidya, why don't we turn it over to you?
Hello, it's me. I was wondering if after all these years you like to meet. My name is Vidya Srinivasan. I am a principal product manager at Meta, formerly known as Facebook. I work in trust and safety, and my job is to ensure that we keep the billions of people who use messaging products on Facebook, Messenger, and Instagram safe. I'm also a singer. And if you all promise me till the end, we'll probably close it off with a song again. I am a public speaker. I've given over 150 talks in my career so far. And I'm a mom to 2 little kids, ages and under 8. So I am really looking forward to this conversation because there's so much to unpack here. And thank you all for joining from literally around the world. Harveen, do you want to introduce yourself?
For sure. I cannot beat that Vidya because I'm not a singer. But yes, hello everyone. I am Harveen Kaur. I was born and brought up in Delhi, India. So that's where I'm originally from. But I've been in California for, I don't know, around 8 years now. I work at Apple, where I'm the technical learning program manager. That's a mouthful, but basically my job entails creating courses and curriculum for our technical learning audiences. So engineers, managers, PMs. I also do a little bit of facilitation and teaching of those courses. And I assess what is the strategy going forward for education for the AI/ML org at Apple. I used to be a software engineer until a year ago. I pivoted to the PM role last year. And I'm a mom to Arjun, who's 3-year-old, and Arya, who's now 9 months old and is crawling all over the place. She's really hard to contain, and it's been a really fun ride so far. I'm excited for this conversation because I really, really wish that I had these conversations, access to these conversations when I became a mom. And I really felt so isolated. I had one mom friend who I would keep in touch with, and that was my rock at that time. And I just wish more people talked about this. So I'm really excited to do this together. Katie, why don't you go?
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Noble, and I went to school for electrical engineering. I worked at a number of companies, including 8 years at Tesla, and I worked at Agilent Technologies as well. And my most recent corporate role was as the director of program management at a startup called Outrider. And my career has usually been in systems integration and test and program management, technical program management, but I kind of bop back and forth between those two. But I now run my own consulting firm, and where I get to do those different things with lots of different clients. And I live outside of Denver with my partner and 2 kids. They are 7 and almost 10, and they start school in 6 days. Not that I'm counting, definitely counting. And they're a handful, but wonderful. And yeah, I'm, again, just like everybody else said, super excited to have this conversation, because I wish people had been more open about it, like you said, Harveen, when I was pregnant. So I kind of knew a little bit more about how everybody did it.
Amazing. All right, well, let's just dive right in. And so actually, one thing before we dive right in, we want this conversation to be really valuable for all of you. So if something resonates with you, feel free to drop it in the chat. Or maybe we're talking about something and you have a tip you want to share, drop it in the chat. And if you have any questions for us, you can hit the Q&A icon that's in the bottom right of your Zoom screen and add any questions there, and we'll take them towards the end. So again, motherhood is lonely, as we talked about. So I really hope you walk away from today's session feeling some solidarity, but also some really practical tips that you can apply right away. And we want you to just have fun. Like, our plates are all full, overflowing. And so just this is like an opportunity to invest in yourself and just like sit back and just have fun with a group of awesome people. I love the energy in the chat. It's amazing. So, all right, let's just actually dive into it. The tech industry especially is celebrated for innovation. But the concept of work-life balance or having it all for mothers in tech still feels like a myth. Is the idea of having it all even realistic, or does it set us up for failure? And, I'd love to get your take on this. And I'm curious, like, as you've been figuring out this answer for yourself, has there been a pivotal moment that you've had to reassess your approach to balancing tech career ambitions with motherhood? So, Katie, you can kick it off.
Yeah, great, thanks. So this one really hits home for me. I feel like growing up, I kind of heard that I could have it all. I think my mom's generation and many other people before that really fought for that. And so going into motherhood, I really thought that I should be able to do it all. And I totally felt like a failure when I couldn't. A pivotal moment for me, I think, was when I realized that I needed to go into kind of a holding pattern in my career for the time being. Like, I had a newborn and I was at Tesla, and like I'd always been, on an upwards trajectory, just like always felt like I needed to bring my A game to everything. And I couldn't. And also it just was a really challenging time for me. And that holding pattern was okay. It took me a long time to realize that was okay, because there were other times in my career where I could then accelerate. And just realizing that it's always a balance and it's always shifting was really important to me. And I still struggle with that regularly. But I mentioned earlier that I run my own consulting firm now, and that was another big decision where I decided to leave like the corporate world for a while. And that's provided more balance for me and for my family. My husband's also in tech. So I guess to answer the original question, I figured out that I can have it all, just not necessarily all at exactly the same time. So like regularly reevaluating my goals and finding that balance has been important to me, and just kind of remembering that everything is a season.
I love that. I think that's been a big learning for me too, around you can't have it all at once. I think that's, yeah, but you can have it all. It's just such a myth that just sets up for failure. And so thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing like that transition, those decisions you've made around it. Vidya, I'd love to get your take on this, especially as you come from, being at Meta and being in a full on, like, just having a full plate yourself also.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Katie said. I think you can have it all over the long term. But I think a lot of us forget the long-term part of it, and we try to obsess to like do it all over the short term, which is what burns most moms out, right? So, you need to learn to balance in the short term. And I go by the rule of 3, where I think I can do a kick-ass job on 3 different things on any given day/week/month. Right? And these 3 things, you get to define what it is for you over the period of the next month, next quarter, next year, whatever, right? But for me, at several points in time, my family is non-negotiable. And what I mean by my family is like showing up for my kids, taking them to practices, sitting for recitals, and helping them with homework, setting up play dates, planning parties. Like that's like a full-time job in itself, let's be honest, right? That is a full-time job. Parenting, even if you have like a 100%, equal partner, is a full-time job. Right? So there's that. And then work. a lot of times, I definitely accelerated my work. Uh, I work at Meta now, which is, a pretty fast-paced company. Things move really fast. We don't talk, tens of thousands. We talk millions and billions, right? It's a very different mindset to work there, right? That means you have to accelerate your career, and that's one more. And the third time thing has been different for me at different points in time. Sometimes I went all in on public speaking. There were years where I did 40 talks in one year, right? And sometimes I dialed it back. Now I'm all about fitness because I need to take care of myself if I don't take care of my family, right? So I think all this to say that you have to figure out what is your rule of three. What are the three non-negotiable things for you at any given point in time? And if you do justice to that, one, it's going to make you really satisfied, and two, it's not going to make you feel guilty because you have told yourself that for the next foreseeable future, these are the three things that matter to me. And for me, it reduced guilt by a large amount, I would say, because I could rewire myself and say that, yeah, I am not focusing on that because, hey, remember you said you're going to focus on these three things for the next few months, right? So that framework, it took me a while to adapt, but once I have gotten into that mindset, it definitely made my life so much more simpler, I would say.
I love that you brought up the guilt part around it. I think so many of us struggle with mom guilt, work guilt, friend guilt, partner guilt, like just insert anything up in front of the word guilt. And so I'm curious, like, how do you figure out what are those three priorities for yourself, Vidya?
That's complex, right? Because you have to look at your career goals, you have to look at your familial goals, you have to look at your, side hustles, right? So for me, I think there were times when, especially when I was pregnant with my second, I did take, a slightly less aggressive approach to work. Aggressive is a good term, you guys. Like it gets thrown around as a negative term for women, but you're being ambitious. If you're aggressive in your career, that just means you're ambitious. There's nothing wrong in being ambitious in your career. So there were times when I was like, okay, I'm not going to kill myself for a promo in like 18 months. It's okay if it comes in 2.5 years or 2 years, right? That for me is my baseline, right? So, and for different people, it might be different. And that's completely okay. Your familiar circumstances might be different. And I'm also an immigrant here. The support system I had back in India, or I would have had back in India if I had raised my family over there, is completely different than what I have over here. Right? And I also have to be realistic to the fact that this is the life we chose, and that means it comes with pros and cons, right? So being more, in line and aligned with what is important for me, what are the things that will make me feel sad or make me regret if I'm not focusing on that mindset has really helped me, I would say. A good example is I used to write in LinkedIn all the time. Last year grew to 50 something thousand, but over the course of, last year, I felt, damn, I'm not taking care of myself, right? I need to spend more time becoming fit mentally, physically, right? So that means I had to, like, it's 24 hours, and the other two non-negotiables were clearly written down for me as family and career. That means I had to look somewhere to cut the time, right? So I took a step back from all my side hustles. Like I reduced the number of talks I gave, I reduced the amount of time I spent on writing, and I power channeled all of that into fitness, right? So I think all this to say that it is going to be different. This was my three things were different 3 years ago. I'm damn sure it's going to be different 3 years later, right? But I think it doesn't. Having this framework definitely helps me not, feel bad about, damn, I'm not doing that other thing that I was doing 3 years ago, right? And that just makes life simpler.
Definitely. I really love that you brought up the point, like, it's going to look different for each one of us. And so we have to figure out personally, like, what are our priorities? And I think so often I've gotten stuck on like, I should want to get promoted in the next year, or I should be like cooking every meal for my children, or whatever that should is for us. And I think it's really important that we have to like really question those expectations, especially because there's like society really just like imposes so much, or we've learned so much around it. And so I'd love to like talk more about our day-to-days. Like, what do our day-to-days actually look like? How do we figure out, I mean, what are some like strategies or quote unquote life hacks that we've used to kind of like navigate this? So Praveen, would love to hear from you, especially, you have a 9-month-old, plus you have a toddler, you just came back from mat leave. So we'd love to hear from you, like, how are you thinking about your day-to-day right now? Or just, that like that you can't have it all. So how are you approaching this?
Okay, firstly, I want to say I was nodding so hard when like Vidya and Katie were speaking. I was like, yes, 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 right? I'm looking for like reactions. I'm like, I want to say yes and send like loves and whatever, right? So a lot of that resonates with me, especially the prioritization like framework that Vidya talked about, because I had to like really go hard on that too, to like understand my day to day. But I want to kind of come back to what you said initially, Shivani, and like that was like, yes. which is, this is a messy journey, right? And I want to like normalize it being messy. So my day to day is definitely like, it shifts from day to day, it shifts from like week to week. It's also like not what I had in mind as an ideal mom. So my idea of an ideal mom is my mom, right? That's where you kind of pick up a lot of these ideas. And my mom used to wake up at 5:30 in the morning. She used to get everyone's lunches ready. She used to like, get us ready for school and like do all of that good stuff and then go to work, come back to work, help us with the homework, etc. I cannot do that. Like I just like, when I became a parent, I was like, I don't think I'm ready for this. I'm not a morning person. I cannot do this, right? So I'm like, just want to normalize and give this like preface to my day to day that like, it's like, if you're not a morning person, you're a night person. If you're like a great, like, totally a morning person and you're just like, you get very sleepy in the afternoon or whatever, like, it's okay, because for a long time I guilted myself about it. Like, oh no, I'm not a good parent because I'm not waking up at 5:30. And no, I'm just like gonna let go of that. So with that preface, my day-to-day looks like my 9-month-old daughter, like she'll wake up at whatever time, and that's my alarm clock. So like depending on when she wakes up, I wake up. That's typically around 7:30. And then go to work. The nanny comes in at around 8. So after the nanny comes in, that's her problem. So I'm like mentally like, okay, you are the caregiver for now. I'm gonna detach for a while and go to work. I've just like Vidya, I've started like adding mental and physical health to my priorities in this season of my life. So sometimes I might have my therapy appointment and then I do that at work. So that I have like a space where I can be myself. Like I try to not do it at home. And then some evenings I'll have my gym appointment, so I'll go to that. Today is one of those days. I'm really excited about it. So just like integrating these like little things, like an hour of like therapy a week, an hour or like 3 hours of like exercise a week for myself, like just that has made such a huge difference in how I feel day to day. Because before that, I was just feeling like I felt like I was running on autopilot. I was just like all of these incoming requests from like parenting and school and work, and they were just like, I was just like reacting to everything rather than responding to it. So now I'm like kind of taking a step back and like being more intentional about, let me carve out like this time, even if it's like 3 hours a week for myself. And like even that has made like a huge difference. So that's a part of my day to day. And then once I'm back home, around 5 or 6 is when I'm back home, and then the nanny shift ends. I have this rule around work-life balance where I just like before 9 p.m. when my kids go to bed, I just like don't look at screens. Like I don't look at my laptop. I just don't think about work. It's like, this is my block. It's my family time. So 5 to 9 or 6 to 9, I try to like just be present for my family. And like, that means like, okay, the TV can be on sometimes, right? I'm like, I'm not idealizing the perfect, like I'm playing with my kid all the time. No, it's like, sometimes I'm just like, please just stop screaming, right? But it's like, it's time where like I'm trying to not get distracted by things like work. And after 9, once my kids are, in bed and settled, that's the me time. So sometimes it's like my husband and I would spend some time together watching some TV, or sometimes I'm just like cleaning up the house, or sometimes I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just like scrolling, like, so, or like I'm doing school assignments because I am enrolled in a part-time MBA program. So that's the 10 to 11, I think, at night, or like 9 to 11 is that block where I'm like, let me catch up with like my stuff, and then I go to bed at 11. So that's my day to day mostly. Yeah, it's messy. It changes all the time.
I want to touch on one quick thing that Harveen said about an ideal mom. I think that was an interesting thing that you brought up, Harveen. And I think the internet has stereotyped what an ideal mom is. Like it placed the bar so high. And I feel like that's just an impossible thing to achieve if that's what you're shooting for, right? I just want to say, like, you're all ideal for your kids. Like that's what I always look at. Am I ideal for my kids? Yes, given my circumstances. But I think like we have to like stop. I'm not gonna bake bread from scratch to make lunch for them. That's just not me. I don't have the time for that. But there are people who do that, more power to them. But I'm sure they're compromising on something else that I might be doing a really good job at. I think it has to be, we have to, especially as moms, we have to be very sure that we don't judge others for something that they are not doing that you might be doing, or be judged by others. Like, don't let that get to you. You're ideal for your kids, and that all matters in this whole world.
Absolutely. Like, don't judge other parents. Like, if they're like showing their kids like the phone, like I try not to do that while they're eating, but like other kids, other parents do that, you have different struggles. And if that works for you, perfect, right? And then don't judge yourself. Or like, I give my kids like microwaved food all the time. I'm like, chicken nuggets for dinner, let's do it. You eat dino nuggets and mama is also going to have dino nuggets. Let's do this together, right? I do that all the time and I don't guilt myself because I don't prioritize cooking, but I prioritize other things like reading to my kids, and those are more important to me. So I don't judge myself. I don't judge other women. So yeah, Vidya, thank you for bringing that in.
Yeah, and I would also just love to say also thank you, Harveen, for bringing up your mental health. I also carve out time every week for, well, it should be every week. I try to carve out time every week for therapy. And I am really passionate about talking about mental health, especially because I was hit pretty hard with postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression, and I didn't know anybody else who had that or had ever talked about it. So if you're going through that, you're not alone, and it's good to get help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Shivani, like you are an entrepreneur and you're doing so many things at once. I just like sometimes it blows my mind. Like you're using your lunch hour for this panel, which is like being attended by 200 people. So what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, for sure. I'm loving this conversation. And plus one on the mental health stuff. Like I also, my weekly also includes a therapy session, which I think like, we all have really full plates, but carving out that time, one thing I want to say, like one thing that's really worked for me is blocking out time in advance for the things that are important. So like yoga classes, I have like certain days I go to yoga on and do regular therapy. And that's just like, I just plan my meetings around it. And like, yeah, sometimes it does get overridden. Like this week, because I'm in survival mode, like a lot of stuff has like gone out the window and I don't think I've gone outside in like 3 days, but normally like it is on track. And so I think a big part of something that's really helped me as like I've gotten more settled into being a mom with a full career is just having really, really clear priorities, like Vidya was talking about, in advance of when things do get super chaotic. Like I just already know like what am I going to drop first and what am I going to like focus on. And then I think the other thing is just recognizing like things will totally change. Like I can have this game plan. Like, we were supposed to be in preschool this week. And so this is just like not the week. Like this is like right now what we're doing, like not what I expected. But it was like, okay, cool. Like let's just roll with this. This is what's gonna happen. Like let's make sure we have childcare figure out and like all this stuff, and let's just all be healthy. And then here's like the couple work things that like are super important that I like really want to nail. Like for example, this conversation and everything else. And so I think just having that clarity in advance before things get chaotic has really helped me just feel more grounded, and then just giving myself permission. Like, I've been up with my daughter a lot last night. And so this morning I actually took a nap at 8 a.m. And I was like, I'm so tired. Like my plan was to go for a walk, but I was like, I'm so tired. I'm just gonna take a nap. And so it's just like, like just kind of doing what feels good to you. And quite frankly, like, especially with like the pregnancy, I think when I first found out I was pregnant, like I was like, okay, great, I'm so excited. But like, yeah, that's just like happening in the background. And I can just keep operating at the same level that I am right now. And I didn't really consider the fact that I also have an active toddler. And pregnancy is a real thing. Your body is actually changing. And so I really burnt out in May. And my daughter got sick a lot in May. Childcare was unstable. My partner had to travel for work. I had to travel for work, and I just got to a state where like it was my daughter's birthday, and our nanny was throwing her like this really beautiful party in the park, and I just started like crying while I was watching her set up. I'm like, why am I sad about this? Like, why am I crying right now? Like I'm really happy, and I would just cry multiple times, and it just made me. It was a wake up call to me that like I am at my limit, and so I had to like deprioritize some things, including a dream project, until next year. And it's just like nothing is worth that like mental toll that it takes. And also I'm like enjoy the journey. I'm like, what am I trying to work towards? Like this is, I am like I said, like, I truly believe this is like such the best time of my life right now. And I really want to appreciate that. So for me, it's been, really being intentional every day. What do I do? I say no to things, even if they sound really amazing, if it's not in my list of priorities. And, for example, like Praveen's kids wake up a lot, like at 7:30. My daughter, no matter what we've tried, wakes up at 5:30 a.m. So I'm in bed by like 8:39 because like I need all that sleep I can get right now. And we've just readjusted our day for that. And so I think also just, figuring things out that works well for myself, and like, okay, yeah, that's just what I'm gonna do. And sometimes that means I'm gonna say no to like dinner invites. I'm like, sorry, that's like past my bedtime. And sometimes I'm gonna rally, I'm gonna go because like those social investments are also really fun and really good for me. So I think it's just like, and like the irony of all of this is I'm actually more successful than I've ever been right now. And I think it's theirs because like I'm so much more intentional And then I'm also not feeling burnt out. Like I feel in such a good place right now because I've taken care of myself. And people can sense that. And so, and when you're intentional, even at work, when you're like really strategic about like, here's what our project goals are, here's what we have to do, here's what we have to say no to, like people are going to recognize you as being really strategic and you're going to do better work. And so that whole concept of like, I have to do it all at once is it's such a false notion, and just being really clear about your priorities is really important. Speaking of priorities, I would love to just like, we've been talking a lot about intentional trade-offs, like purposely dropping things off our plates. And I think a lot of what's been enabled, we've been making trade-offs, but also we have support systems or tools that we put in place. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that. So Vidya, I'm curious, like, what are the support systems that you use to either professionally or personally to help you navigate these priorities and just have a full career and a mom and like your own life in general?
So many support systems. Where do I start? For one, I think I'm very fortunate that we have parents come and stay with us all through summer every year. Because summer camps, managing summer camps, that's a freaking full-time job in itself. The number of camps, pick up, drop off. Sometimes I feel like I'm an Uber driver, like just like chauffeuring kids from point A to point B and then to point C and then back to point D. But all this to say that, I need somebody at home so that I don't have to think about, it's been 4 months since I cooked because praise the Lord, my mom is here and she cooks much more deliciously than me. But that's something that I don't even have to think about. And I feel like I do know, I acknowledge that this comes from a place of privilege, right? But I do know a lot of my friends who just, lean on meal prep services. They have outsourced that part of, their lives to, cooks or meal prep services or to, takeouts. And that's okay if that's what you need to get through, right? We do a lot of carpools to kind of minimize driving time and more important, take the carpool lane, right? I outsourced all of my cleaning to cleaners. I am also, when I was in college, my friends used to call me Monica from Friends because I am the kind of person who vacuums a vacuum cleaner, right? And then once I had my kids, I was like, I can spend the rest of my life just cleaning. Or I can do other things, right? I had to like make myself okay that, okay, the house is going to be messy, make peace with it, right? Like you just have to make peace with it. Yes, you clean it and then the next 5th minute, there's going to be stuff everywhere, right? So I outsourced all of that to somebody else who can do a much better job than I can with, the number of things happening, in my life. And even at work, I think I had to embrace a lot of techniques to scale sustainably. At my level, as a product manager, you're working on multiple, very complex, very ambiguous problems that will impact millions of people. And you cannot afford to lose focus. That means I had to learn to focus deeply, work very smartly, and reduce, time I spent on each of this. And more importantly, set up an army of people that I lean on, right? To get this done. And I have to like employ, that could be the next podcast, the next event that we do, Shivani, where how do you scale sustainably at work? Like I had to almost like learn a lot of things and figure out very, strategically, how do I make sure that I scale sustainably at work? Right. And another thing that I think I've briefly mentioned this before is I had to take a step back from writing. I love writing. I write a lot at work, but I used to be much more active on social media to share my thoughts, and especially around moms in tech. But that's something I had to consciously trade off because I wanted to dedicate that time into my fitness. I run every single day. I've run 600 miles in the last 1 year, because that is my therapy, that is my meditation, and that is the only time I get to be myself with myself. Because every other time I'm giving to my family, I am giving to my community, I am giving to my work, right? So that time that I take for myself, for working out, for running, for lifting, is precious to me because that's the only time I get to connect with myself, right? And that's a very conscious trade-off. It sucked, especially because I was growing well on some of these platforms, and I loved engaging with the community. I absolutely loved learning from the community, but it was a very conscious trade-off that, but I had to do this because I was going to burn out if I did not pivot at that point in time. So I think nobody can do it alone. Like in product, we always say you can't build a product in silo, you can't pair it in silo. You need a village and sometimes a big ass city, but you need that system. Otherwise, it's very, very hard to do it. And I don't think you should aim to do it alone. It's not even a thing. It's a myth.
Yeah, and I think the way, I mean, even when we think about past generations, it takes a village. That's really true of, and people had big support systems around them that helped them raise the kids. And here, our modern society is just different, and you have to create that systems for yourself, whether it's you're fortunate enough to have family around or you have paid help around it. And, even for me, like some of it, it's like a childcare situation. Like I have like backup childcare to my backup childcare now because like things just happen. And in the morning when you wake up and your child is sick and you're like, or your like childcare is sick, then it's like you got to just scramble. So just having those systems in place, I think that's a big thing that's really helped me. It's just like being super organized, even with like groceries. Like I just get everything online delivery. I also recognize a lot of this is like a lot of privilege in this. So I totally acknowledge that. And if you are able to do it, like anything I can outsource for like delivery, I'll just do it. Even packages, I love DoorDash package pickup now, and like they'll help me return.
Can I say a thing about privilege? I think like Vidya and you both said. So I think hiring help and like outsourcing things is definitely a privilege. I do not want to like kind of deny that, but I do want to bring something to our attention, which is that I feel like as women, when we are like outsourcing things and like getting the support system, getting this help, we still do feel a little bit of guilt, like at the back of our mind. So I want to bring our attention to the movie Oppenheimer, if you've watched that. And he's a very successful person. There's an entire movie on him, right? But did you notice that there's a scene that was the most impactful scene to me in the entire movie where they give their baby to literally to like for someone else to parent for a while so that like he can work on this Manhattan project and like completely focus on that. And like I'm sure no one like thought like that gave a second thought to that scene. But to me, I was like, childcare, exactly. If I had that support system, I would also be building an atom bomb, maybe. I don't know. But I feel like those are things that men have had that support system for generations, and we never questioned that. And now that we are building that for ourselves, we still have that tiny tinge of like questioning, like, is that okay if I ask someone else to do the cleaning? Shouldn't I be doing it? So like, I just want to throw that in. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, I think that's great. I have zero. I think it's great because like I have zero guilt now for like because I've also been like I'm like, oh, if I can just do it myself, I should just do it. But I like zero guilt now for outsourcing stuff. I'm like, if I can afford it, I'm gonna do it because like then I can use the time to go do something else, like spend time with my kids or go do work stuff that's gonna be more impactful. And I know Katie, you're going through this right now as you're training. So I'm curious, how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, so I just wanted to emphasize what you all just said also, that like the guilt in particular, Harveen, for me has been really bad. Like when I finally was like, look, I'm the only person in this house that cares about having clean toilets, and I don't have time to be like to have this extra mental load like for house cleaning, for what do we have, like do we need more butter, do the kids have shoes that fit, all that other stuff. And the cleaning thing was really hard for me because also when like my kids just make messes constantly, like I can declutter and then like an hour later I'll be like, what happened here? So it's just like this never ending Sisyphean mountain you're climbing. And it's the guilt that came along with just finally outsourcing to have cleaners come every 2 weeks. Like I still feel guilty, like I should be able to keep a clean house or whatever, but I have to spend so much time just cleaning before the cleaners get there. I mean, I'm not vacuuming the vacuum cleaner. I'm talking like make it so they can actually vacuum without sucking up Legos. like all of those things are just extra tasks. But so I totally feel the guilt with the outsourcing. But one small thing I'm doing, I'm not running 600 miles. But I am training for a triathlon and it's on Sunday, which I'm super excited about. But
That's not small, that's huge.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But I was having a lot of trouble eating, like making sure I was getting really balanced meals and getting enough protein and getting the nutrition that I needed to fuel my body to do that. And so again, place of privilege, but I've been ordering factor meals because they're like, I know what I'm getting. It just shows up at my house and I have to microwave it for 2 minutes. And then I know that I'm fueling my body in the middle of the day when I might be giving dino nuggets, which also are perfectly fine, but not quite enough for what I need right now. So just little things like that have helped. But the childcare, I definitely felt super hard, like the backup for a backup, I do not have right now. And I feel like I'm super lucky that my parents live an hour away, but they're getting older and it's like a big drive for them. So it has to be like it's like a big ask to have them come over for date night. And our sitters have aged out of wanting to like watch kids. So now we're like, do we have like the 12-year-old that can keep them alive and just give them goldfish? We don't have like a go out for a whole night kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's just like year to year it changes, season to season again it changes, but right now like outsourcing the cleaning and the meals has been helpful for me.
Thanks so much for sharing that. We've been talking a lot about what are the systems we put in at home. I'd love to talk a little bit what are systems we put in at work. And so, I know personally for me, and then I would love to talk about the motherhood penalty around that, like how's that shown up for us? I think for me, just having like a full place at work, being CEO of a fast growing business, it's really a couple things that have really helped for me is like planning has been number one. And this speaks to like the prioritization that we were talking about earlier. And so I have, for example, quarterly, monthly, and weekly goals. One for our team, which I'm sure many of you do that at the organization level, but I also have it for myself personally. And so every Friday, I will plan the following week, and it's like messy. It's in like the Apple Notes app, and I'll be like, what are the priorities I have? Like, what are the 3 to 5 things I need to accomplish in the following week? And so it's like really clear what I need to focus on. Usually just like 3, and then there's like 2 other kind of secondary things I just know. And then for every day, I have a plan. So every day I'm like, here's what I'm gonna do, and I actually map it out. And I know that like in terms of I know I'm like in the mornings I'm the freshest, so that's where I prioritize all my strategic stuff. And I will like try to move my meetings down below. It's not always possible, but like I will just try to be really clear. I will like whenever possible. And so, and then I will take like, even if I'm like running late at like, if I don't get time in the day, like even at night, I'll just spend 5 minutes and just map out my next day, just to be really clear, because that really helps me when I start work in the morning. I'm not losing brain power or time. I'm planning like, okay, what do I have to go do? I just have a really clean list of priorities, and I also have it mapped out by like the hour. I never follow the hour, it always falls behind. And so, but at least it gives me a sense of like, it helps me kind of adjust my mind, like, okay, like I can't get distracted. I just need to get this done. Or like, even if I'm not doing it by my like time schedule, at least I know like, here's the things I need to do. And every day there's always things I don't get to, but at least I've gotten like the biggest thing done. Like one exercise that we do in Career Mama in the Slack is like, we always ask like, what's the one thing you want to achieve every day? And that has been really helpful for us, because then at least I leave the day feeling like, okay, I at least accomplished that. Because before then I was leaving my day just feeling like, oh, I didn't get anything done. But this is like really helped me and be like, okay, no, I actually got the thing I actually really need to do. What about you all? Like, is there anything else that you use for work to help you really, especially if like manage like big projects or just like your full place day to day, or you're thinking about getting promoted, or, we talked a lot about like sustainability at scale. So curious to get your experience on this.
I can share a couple of things that I do at work. One, I block my calendar religiously. Like I can proudly say I have a PhD in calendar management by now, because juggling so many different calendars and making sure that you still like have a life to live after that is hard. But at work, I protect my calendar religiously. I have focus blocks. Anything that requires deep thinking is on the calendar. And I decline meetings left, right, and center if I don't need to be. I empower my team so that they can attend the meeting. I catch up on notes. I don't attend a meeting if it doesn't have an agenda. I try to have shorter meetings. If somebody puts like a 1 hour meeting, I'm like, do we really need 1 hour? Can we do it in 25 minutes? I think we can do it in 25 minutes. So I think you have to be very, very, you have to advocate for what you want, because at the end of the day, it's your time. And I think, I have learned to ruthlessly prioritize and effectively delegate at work, especially so that I'm able to do justice to my portfolio. And I think a lot of that translates into the home front as well. I have my workouts planned in my calendar. Everything is, planned to the T. Weekends are all planned months in advance, because that's the only way you can figure out, how do you shape your weekend, right? I mean, between classes and play dates and birthdays to social events, it's a lot. Like we have very busy lives. I mean, I'm sure all of you all have very busy lives. If you have a kid, you have a busy life, period. Right. So, just making sure that, you don't drop the ball on anything. And also, we also plan our vacations well in advance. That also helps. Like, and another thing that I also want to take is, we spoke about mental health a little bit before. I also take time off now and then. I just take a Friday off. And it's just for me. I don't have a big agenda or whatever. I'm like, I'm just going to live that day. you know I think we need to have such downtime, because as a mom, my weekends are not really down times, I would say. Like, there's still like chunks of my weekends where I still have to take kids to class, or do other things, prep, do laundry. Oh my god, can we speak laundry? So there's all of these things that still take a lot of your energy, right? So I try to take Friday off now and then, and just do whatever I feel like doing that day, and that also helps, to be honest.
I want to add something to like what Vidya's been saying, and I think she's been kind of referring to the same thing, but I'll add a little bit of flavor to it. Is that like being more intentional and thinking about the ROI, so like return on your investment and like the things you're doing. So the fact that she talked about like declining meetings is exactly that, right? Like, do I need to be in this meeting? Like, what's my return on that time investment of going into that meeting? I think that mindset of like applying this ROI lens to a lot of things has helped me a lot. In like just growing in my career, but also like balancing part-time school with my job. So I think last year, I mentioned earlier that last year I pivoted from a software engineer to a PM role. And to do that, like I had to kind of start building out my network, start like talking to more PME type folks, because my entire circle was software engineers, right? So I was trying to use my part-time MBA as a platform to like do some of that networking. And there's like tons of events, right? There's like, if you want to go to events at an MBA school, there's no dearth of events, right? But like as a mom, firstly, like I just don't have that freedom to like be out partying until 3 a.m., right? So I had to like always bargain with my as literally as Vidya said, like we have a common calendar, my husband and I. We have a shared calendar, and like I had to bargain months in advance, like, oh, there's this event and I want to go to that one. But how was I picking these events, right? I also live very far away from school. So I like live 50 miles away. So the commute is a long one. So thinking about the ROI, I always like went to events where like there's people from my class, right? And I can talk to them during dinner breaks and such, but then I don't get to meet people outside of my class. So I was always prioritizing events where like there's cross cohort networking opportunities, or there's like opportunities where more program managers or product managers would be present. So like just thinking about that like ROI trade-off, like at different steps of time, I think has really helped. Even at work, I try to like, okay, should I go to this team lunch? Is it just gonna be like social stuff? Like, can I use that hour for something else? Or is there like a very strategic or like key player coming to that lunch, and I can go to that and like build a connection? So is that going to be, I think, Shivani, I see you nodding, because like, I think you wrote a post about this recently where like, I think you went out of your way to like network with someone and you found that the ROI was really good. So yeah, that's additional tip I would like to add.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to flip this conversation a little bit. So focusing on work, and I want to talk more about the motherhood penalty. I think all of us, as we're thinking about having kids, or as we've had kids, have stressed about like, what's the impact going to be on my career? I know that was like the number one topic before I had kids. I would ask, like, my friends and I would talk about what, like, how's it going to hurt us, or what's going to happen? And so, the motherhood penalty really refers to the biases that we face as mothers at work, whether in hiring or whether or not we get promoted or which opportunities we get given. So I'm curious, Katie, like, have you navigated this, or like, how have you confronted this in your career?
Yeah, super good question. I was scared of it for ages as well. I think we probably all are, for better or for worse. But at one of my previous companies, nobody really ever talked about their life outside of work. It was like you couldn't admit that there was part of you that did not exist in that office. And that kind of meant we didn't know that other people were going through similar struggles, which was rough. But like, I couldn't hide that something was happening outside of work when I was pregnant, right? So going through that pregnancy and the newborn phase was rough, especially when you were like, I felt like I had to minimize how hard that was. And like you were talking earlier, Shivani, like you're growing a human, like that takes an immense amount of energy, and like trying to seem peppy, and oh my gosh, the amount of like concealer to cover up the dark circles and everything was rough. But I eventually at that company found a group of other parents to kind of band together with. And we also advocated for better parental leave changes. because they were pretty terrible, like from a paid perspective. I know that's another place of privilege to even work somewhere that had anything. And I lived in California at the time, which also helped immensely because we had things like EDD. But getting together and making a change for future parents when I didn't even know if I was going to have another kid really empowered me and just like made me feel a lot better about the situation. And one of the ways I've changed there also is that I go out of my way now to talk openly about life outside of work, whether that's like the fact that I have kids, that I have hobbies, that I'm doing a triathlon, that I have aging parents, like all of those things are additional pieces of me that if I can just normalize it for a couple more people or even my mental health, then that makes me feel really good that I've helped there. So the motherhood penalty for me, I also have the privilege to be at the point in my career where I'm like, if you don't want to hear about my, like, if you are going to penalize me for having kids, I don't want to work here. And I know that's super privileged, especially given the job market right now, but I don't want to work somewhere anymore that I know that sounds super privileged, but do you know what I'm saying? Like I don't want to work somewhere where I have to pretend like the rest of me doesn't exist. So I think I'm just going with I have a post-it on my wall that says be fearlessly authentic. And so I try to bring that everywhere now.
I love that. And I really appreciate you calling this out because many of us on here probably do have similar privileges. And so it's also normalizing, like, you don't have to take the job just because it has like the best logo or because it feels like that's the thing you should do. It's like, I think, again, it's another good example of what you're sharing of like doing what feels good to you. Hervine, I'm curious, like, I know you just came back from mat leave and you had some kind of like, you had some challenges as you're coming back. So I'd love to hear like your experience on that end.
Challenges, yeah, I always say new baby, new challenges, right? Like it's the second baby and you think like, oh, we'll be more prepared. We know how to change a diaper, right? The first time we were clueless. So the first few months went okay. But yeah, then I feel like I was in postpartum depression, but I did not have the help. Just like Katie said, it's very isolating because even your partner cannot understand you at that time. Because your body is going through so many hormonal changes and you literally had a huge, for me, in my case, I had a surgery. So I was recovering from the surgery. And then I've heard like, and don't quote me on this because I'm not a medical professional, but I've heard like the shift in hormones right after childbirth is the biggest shift you're ever going to have in your life. And that definitely affects your mental health, right? And it's hard for your partner or your family to really like understand or absorb that. So even my husband, like he with the best of his intentions, could not really understand what I was going through. And to add to add flavor to that whole thing, my daughter who I was breastfeeding would not take bottles. She did take bottles initially, and we were like really happy. I was like, great, like this kid is on autopilot. And then one day she just like stopped, and she's like, I don't want bottles anymore, right? And it's a little baby, like you can't force the baby. And then like being the high achieving, like driven women that we are, I did what we do, right? Like I started researching on like methods, like how do I change this, right? I went into the rabbit hole of like reading all the pages on Reddit, reading all the Amazon reviews for like any bottle that exists, trying all different kinds of things. So this went on for like months and months, right? So debilitating anxiety around like, and that was affecting my husband and my relationship too. So there was like a lot going on during maternity leave, which was like made worse by the fact that I had to go back to work in 4.5 months. Again, it's a privileged position that I even got 4.5 months. I know like there's, and I hate to say this, that this is a privilege in America, but a lot of people don't even get like a week or like don't even qualify for FMLA, right? And it's like the biggest injustice that exists. But the fact that I had to go back to work kept adding to that anxiety, right? Now that's where I feel like the motherhood penalty comes in, right? Like if I was in one of the Nordic countries where like you get an year of like, or even in India where you get like 8 months of maternity leave is pretty standard and all paid, I wouldn't even be thinking about like that wouldn't even be a thought in my head of like, oh, I need to get my baby on the bottle because I need to go back to work and stay away from her for 8 hours a day. Why is that even a concept? It's a concept because like I don't get enough maternity leave. If I got enough maternity leave, like my daughter would be having solid food. She would be on a regular schedule. She would, she would be more independent by the time I was going back to work. So this is like an artificial problem that's been created by not giving moms the support they need. And I have a lot of views about this, but Katie, I'm like so proud of you that like you went ahead and like advocated for this. And like if we can join forces somehow to do this together, like I would I'm just so passionate about this thing. I just don't know what the right outlet is. Maybe this panel is a good outlet. But yeah, I love that you fought against that, Katie. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think everything you all are sharing, we're all sharing, is like really resonating in chat, which is really cool to see. I want to be, so last question for you all is, we talked a lot about the difficulties of motherhood, kind of like your challenges in career. And I know we've all found that actually being a mom has made us even better in our career. But society tells us the narrative is always like, how does becoming a mom hurt your career? And so, and I know the four of us really have found that is not accurate. So I'd love to hear from you. How has becoming a mom made you a better leader or actually helped in your career? Savitha, maybe we can start with you.
Absolutely. It's definitely taught me more than what school or even work taught me, I would say. I think a couple of things that I want to call out is it made me very resilient. Because my kids these are tiny humans who are depending on me, period. Right. So I have to figure it out. Like my husband and I, we figure it out. Whatever it is, we did it together, we figured it out. And I think I carry the same mindset at work as well. I'm like, no matter what kind of curveball you throw at me, I'll figure it out, because I think the one thing, Harvey, as we were talking about breastfeeding, oh my God, like I was like remembering all sorts of things from my own journey. It feels like eons ago, where it's just like 2 years ago. And I remember obsessively pumping and like storing, like I got like this additional freezer in my garage because I was so scared that I was going to run out of supply. And I was like just pumping and like hoarding, because I was like so scared that if I go to work and transition, something's going to happen. And then now it feels like, the funny thing is it feels like eons ago, which is not true. And then now I'm like so, taken over by the new set of challenges. Like it's motherhood, I think you just move on from one set of challenges to another set of challenges to another set of challenges. There's never going to be a steady state where you're like, I don't have any challenges. I'm a mom and I don't have any challenges. That is a myth in itself, right? So one, I think it's made me very resilient, and two, it's made me value my time more than anything else, because that is limited. And I think I read this somewhere where they said, when your kid starts kindergarten, you are looking at 13 summers. That's it. You're looking at 13 summers they're going to hang out with you. And it tied a knot in my stomach when I read that. I'm like, that is true. Like I only got 13 summers with my baby. After that, she's going to fly and she's going to do her own thing. I value my time. I value our family time so much because I know I cannot take that for granted.
Thanks for sharing that. Katie, what about you?
Yeah, so I mentioned like in passing that my kids are a lot, but I think everybody could probably say that, but my kids I'm raising highly sensitive, deeply feeling, neurospicy kids. So learning a lot about how different brains work and how and feelings and acknowledging feelings and talking through feelings and communicating through all of this, I think has made me like much more, like I'm already pretty darn empathetic, but this is like I can apply this probably sounds silly, but I can apply the things that I'm teaching, that I was teaching my toddlers or that I'm teaching other people, like them as they age. I can teach those same things to folks that I work with, and in maybe not like hey, I learned this about my toddler, maybe you could apply it, but just like helping other people work more effectively together, coaching people a little bit better, and also just really truly understanding from having this like bone level understanding that every single person is going through something, whether it's challenging kids, whether it's aging parents, whether it's the fact that those hormone changes, Jen, I saw you said this in chat, but like when we start going into perimenopause, our kids are going to be going through puberty, like everybody's going through something. And that's just really, I can really bring that to work even more than I could before.
I so appreciate that. And that I think especially that empathy quality, especially since, it's always been really important, but I think it's becoming even, people recognize it even more important as COVID has hit and like so many things have been happening in the world. And so being able to bring that level of empathy to work is such a unique differentiator and so important. So thank you for sharing that. Harvey, what about you?
Say that again, sorry.
What about, what's like something that's, I know you were talking about like how becoming a mom has helped you better at resolving conflict.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Yes. How can we be better leaders? Like, oof. Okay. I definitely believe that I couldn't be doing my part-time MBA and a job and all of the other things that I do if I was not a mom. Like a lot of people come and ask me like, oh, how do you do all these things despite being a parent? Like, no, it's because I'm a parent that I'm able to do so many things. Because I was like never this effective. I never did like this amount of ruthless prioritization until like this amount of stuff was thrown at me, right? I had to become a very effective person because like now I have to like have a full-time job as a parent. So like I'm doing 40 hours a week parenting. I'm doing 40 hours a week at work. I'm doing like 10 to 20 hours a week school work, right? The only way you can do that is when you're like, oh, now I have to like, be very intentional about my time management and maybe stop watching Bridgerton, right? So yeah, I always say like, it's the fact that I am a parent has made me very, very efficient. But yeah, to your point about conflict resolution, and I know we chatted about this earlier, is that handling a toddler, which you are also in that stage right now, Shivani, so you know the struggle. Handling toddlers is like really, really hard. They have very big emotions. So I had to like learn a lot of techniques on like how to validate emotions, how to understand emotions myself. And that like trickled into my husband and my relationship too, where both of us were having this hard time like handling a toddler. Like you can see my reaction almost. Like I'm like just remembering like all the conflicts that my husband and I had, not because like we were not a good match anymore, but because like we were both operating at 120%. And like when you're both operating at 120%, right? Like how do you like find time for connection? How do you find time where you can just relax and like be yourself? So we were having a lot of conflicts, and then with time, both of us had to like learn like the right way to fight almost. And then that has now transferred into work where like I feel like I'm a much better leader, where I can really listen and understand the other people's perspectives. And that's helping with conflict resolution at work, at home, and also with my toddler. So I feel like, yeah, parents are superheroes, or super women and super moms.
100%. Well said. Well said. And I echo everything that was shared by all three of you about like how it's helped me just be better, stronger. I think I'm just like a much better performer at work because of all the things that you outlined. This conversation has been so amazing. I have learned so much. I'm loving the energy in the chat and just like feeling just so seen and held in this space. And also I'm walking away with so many tips. I'm like, I'm going to do that now next. If you all love today's conversation and you want to create that support system yourself of having high achieving moms at the best companies, and you want to get the practical tips to help you get promoted faster, I'd love for you to come apply to join us at Career Mama. So we're going to drop the link in the chat. Herveen, Katie, and Vidya, thank you so much for opening up. I know it's not easy, and I just like truly appreciate your vulnerability around this. I think we need to just normalize having conversations like this. So I'm excited to hopefully do this again with you all. And just such admirers of you. And if you want to connect with any of us, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. We'll drop our LinkedIn profiles in the chat. We'll send out the recording. Thank you all so much for joining us. I really hope you take a moment to reflect and just take a moment to celebrate yourself today. I think it's really hard and that we just feel like we're always falling behind and don't create time for ourselves. In reality, someone told me once, I was like, when I was just feeling like I'm not as good as I used to be before, mom, and she was like, your average is like better than 95% people's like greatness. And so I was like, yeah, you're right, actually. And so I think just like keeping that in mind has just been really helpful and really powerful. So I hope you just take a moment for yourself before you jump into your next meeting or the rest of your day. Thank you all for joining us and for bringing this amazing energy. Bye, everyone. Take care.